We're at IMF headquarters in Washington, D.C., and we're here with our economics editor, Chris Giles, our World Trade editor and IMF watcher, Shawn Donnan, to talk about what's been coming out of the spring meetings of the IMF and the World Bank that are going on now. Chris and Shawn, maybe we can start by just talking about the main themes that people have been discussing here. Chris, what do you see as the main overarching thematic?
Well, I think the big thing is the global economy. Disappointing again, not terrible. Slow growth and
getting worse or getting better?
No, it's about the same as last year. Hopefully a little bit better next year, but really lots of risks on the horizon. So even though the managing director, Christine Lagarde, was talking about the sunny weather and the sunny parts of the global economy, most of the emphasis has been about the risks, whether they are from banks or debt or China. You know, there's a large number of risks out there in the world. So the expectation is that these forecasts are going to get worse. They're not going to be met.
And are they giving advice to policymakers about how to avoid that?
They're giving quite a lot of advice, but it's the same advice as before. The three prongs: structural reforms, but trying to keep growth going. So growth-friendly structural reforms, more fiscal action where countries have the scope to do that, and more monetary policy action. So all things to boost demand, to try and prevent any of these slowdowns really feeding off themselves and going back into a really nasty period for the world economy.
Shawn, what themes have caught your attention?
So there are all of these themes that Chris is talking about and all of those risks that are mounting, but the one really interesting thing that's popping up here is politics, and that doesn't normally pop up at the IMF and the World Bank meetings. These are economic meetings. This is about financial markets, the state of the global economy, but one of the big themes in the World Economic Outlook, and that we heard again from Christine Lagarde, was political risk. And that comes in a number of different forms, whether it is an increase in sort of anti-trade rhetoric that we're seeing here in the US and in parts of Europe, whether it's the humanitarian crisis that's posed by the refugee crisis coming out of the Middle East and moving into Europe, and seeing that as a real threat, not just to Europe and to the politics there, but also to the global economy. And then finally, the one thing that everyone's talking about, the one big political risk that everyone's talking about, is Brexit, and that's the possibility of Britain leaving the EU and what that might mean.
I found really interesting how the IMF has sort of pointed out this increasing perception people have that policymakers don't know what to do as one of these risks, that is both economic and political. Politics has actually kind of really intervened in the meetings, right? Just today we've seen Alexis Tsipras write an op-ed in the FT about the negotiations over Greece. Last week, of course, we had the Panama Papers, and that's been a theme here. So is this normal for you guys who are veteran watchers? Is it normal that things happen in the week just before? Is it all staged, or is it special?
It's not staged. These things can happen at IMF meetings, often when they come together, when there's big things going on in the world, and also when there's lots of uncertainty. And politicians are here, so they are under some pressure to come up with answers, and quite often they don't have those answers. So you're seeing that, and you're also seeing greater fear. So one of the big issues, Brexit, and in most of the world people didn't think that was a real risk, and now they've come here, they've heard the IMF saying it's a real possibility, and actually you'll hear the Brits saying, you know, it's really quite likely, you know, that Britain could be within 2 months out of the EU, and that opens a whole can of worms in terms of uncertainty, trade relationships. Just exacerbates all the problems that Shawn was just talking about.
So let's just be clear, the IMF says that Brexit is a really bad idea.
So far, what it's doing is working on a definitive study that will be the real economic impact. That'll come out in mid-May during the Article 4 consultations that the IMF will have with the UK. A lot of discussions about what kind of shape that study will take, but clearly they're going to come out with a number. I mean, they've signaled that says this is going to be bad for both the UK and possibly the European economy and potentially the global economy.
The word they use is severe risk.
Severe risk.
Yeah, so they're very worried, and they're worried because they think it could be the start of something bigger, you know, an unravelling of Europe. So it's not just a British question, it's not just that. No one really cares if Britain has a downturn of its own making, but if that spreads to Europe and the global economy, which it could, we know how these things snowball, that's what the fear is.
So this intertwining of politics and economics looks like it's going to go on for a while, way past spring meetings. Chris, Shawn, thanks very much. We'll keep watching this, and so we hope will you.